Be in the know with unlimited access to IBJ and Inside Indiana Business. Our in-depth coverage of all things business means you'll always be completely in the know. Subscribe for just $1 a week. Get started now at ibj.com/trial offer.
A cow says,
sometimes you can feel it.
this is a roller coaster.
And it's all waiting for you to relive at your Indiana State Fair.
Never in Cindy Hoye's wildest dreams did she imagine her destiny would come full circle. From the 5-year-old girl watching young Hoosier 4-H'ers prepare their lambs for show from across the street at her grandparents' apartment, to now, after a decades-long run serving the fair, Cindy is heading into retirement. She reflects on her time as executive director over the past 20-plus years, milestones and growth under her tenure, and what she'll miss most on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC.
Our state fair is a great state fair. Don't miss it, don't even be late.
And I'm pleased to be joined on the podcast this week by Cindy Hoye, the longtime executive director of the Indiana State Fair Commission, transitioning out officially at the end of this month. Cindy, thanks for joining me. How are you?
Oh, Gary, I'm doing just great. I'm kind of in a little bit of that melancholy role of just remembering incredible stories and memories and reflecting on that, and just looking forward to the future and the next leader that is going to take over. And so I'm in a great spot.
Yeah. And I'll bet it is a point in time where you're thinking about, because you have really had a front row seat to amazing transformational change there at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. As you sit back, you got to the fairgrounds as marketing director, right? And that was in like 88.
Yeah. So prior to that, I was at the Wisconsin State Fair.
Gotcha,
Grew up in
yeah.
Indianapolis, but spent some time in Wisconsin, and from that fair then came here in 88 as a marketing director for almost 17 years, and then transitioned into the executive director role. So been proud partner of one of the team for 38 plus years, and yes, transformational change after.
Yeah. And now you grew up not far from the fairgrounds, so you have a special place in your heart for the Indiana State Fair and the fairgrounds. But you mentioned working in Wisconsin, coming to the Indiana State Fairgrounds. When you took the job here, did you anticipate this would be your path? Did you say, this is where I want to be and I want to ultimately lead this place?
No, I mean, wouldn't that have been perfect if I had grown this being I'm going to be a ballerina? And no, that never really happened. I was just always in a place of being incredibly grateful for the role that I played at the time. I never anticipated being the executive director. It had been through a lot of different iterations when I was the marketing director. And again, just incredibly grateful that I had a chance then to lead it. Gary, the funny thing is, my first memory of the state fair was as a young lady. I think I was about 5. My grandparents lived across the street from the fairgrounds on 38th Street.
Wow.
An old apartment building, and it overlooked the sheep barn. And my first memory was looking out over their apartment window and watching the kids tie their lambs on the fence, and thinking, how cool was that they did that. And then ironically, my other set of grandparents lived over at 46th Street. My growing up era, I was kind of surrounded by it, and never dreamed in a million years that I would have the opportunity and the honor to run this institution.
Yeah, I want to talk a lot about the dramatic change, the transformation at the fairgrounds over the last 30 plus years. But go back, Cindy, if you would, to when you arrived at the Indiana State Fair in that marketing role in the late 80s, and then ultimately took over as executive director a number of years later. But reflect back on what the fairgrounds was like physically, but also just from an operational standpoint, because I know it's changed a lot.
I think the most important impact in the late 80s and early 90s was the governance structure. And prior to, or when I first got here, the model was very similar to a county fair model. These passionate volunteers from across the state fair board members that were empowered to come onto this campus and lead the campus. And they had incredible hearts and incredible passion, but maybe not the business acumen that needed to go along with running a business. And so Governor Bai led transformational change to create the State Fair Commission, which is a body that exists today, and the board still exists, but the commission is responsible, the fiduciary responsibility, the importance it is to the state of Indiana being great stewards of this institution and the responsibility that goes along with it. I think that was the most important change that happened. The other thing I think that happened back in the early days when I was here, which was understanding that this infrastructure, this 250-acre campus, was kind of what I would call, I mean, I don't want to sound dramatic, but it was dying. These buildings were old. There were holes in the pavement and the street. The electrical systems were, you talk today to Senator Lysing, she will tell you what it was like as well. And so there was a stop moment by specifically the legislature that said, should we keep investing in this historic institution, or should we move this campus? Should we go out to outside 465 and put the fairgrounds?
So there was actually some conversation about that. Yeah, that's interesting.
It was Borst and Mills and a number of important legislators that said, wait a minute, let's do a full stop and just, is this the right thing? And they did. They came to a resolution that not an official resolution, but a thought resolution of saying this place is important where it is in the community, in the city of Indianapolis, in the state of Indiana, and let's take care of it. And they invested primarily, the biggest investment that happened was through Riverboat. We used to get a portion of the property tax, but the infrastructure change that happened out here was led because of the Riverboat money that came to this place. And at the time, the legislators said, let's go, let's invest fast, let's bond that money, let's revolutionize this historic and important institution. Mm-hmm. And so I think those are the two signature moments for this place back in the late 80s, early 90s.
And you talk about from an operational standpoint too, and operating more like a business and those types of things. And when you took over as executive director, just things counting attendance, right? I mean, that's that's one
of my favorite stories, Gary. When I first year as the marketing director and responsible for driving attendance, right, and driving people to come through the gates. My first year, I lost 1 million people. In 1987, there were 1.5 million people that came to the fair. And then my first year as a marketing director in 1988, we had 500,000 people. So I lost 1 million people. But it was because we actually counted the number of people that came through the gates. Before, they had a formula of, okay, Gary, you came through the gates. Well, you probably brought 2 more people, and let's count your car. And so, okay, so Gary, you came through, that's 3.5 people, right? So that's the way, and I found some old documents on the way they did the formula back in the day. So we finally said, look, we got to clean this up. We got to take it on the chin. We've got to set the course right. And we've got to build the confidence in the number of people that actually come here and participate. So so that was one of my first.
Yeah. Well, the change in the physical plant, the physical structure, the look and feel of the fairgrounds obviously has changed in an amazing way over the years. Some of the big projects, I guess the biggest perhaps would be what is now the Corteva Coliseum. As I remember, $63 million really facelift of that historic structure.
Transformational change. So it's actually one of my signature moments is when we said goodbye to the old Coliseum and we opened the doors and let the public come in to say goodbye. And the stories that were told about people's traditions and memories of the old Coliseum and the smells and the sight lines and I remember coming here with my dad and going to the old ABA Pacer games, right?
Yeah, Cindy, I remember that I was very young, and I always remember at Pacer games all of the smoke from people smoking that was accumulated at the top of the the top of the rafters.
Right. And gosh, talking to the old ABA players, and they were talking about the old locker room, which was literally just a room, 30 by 30 room with one shower.
Wow.
That's what the locker room was back in the day. But again, Gary, the stories of people and their memories, and that's what it's just a capstone of what this place is that it really matters to people, not only at Corteva Coliseum, but the entire place and their own personal stories. But yeah, that was a historic renovation. And one of the reasons that I loved it so much is that we kept the outside structure because the way it was built, the trusses were separate than the inside bowl. And so we were able to tear out everything but the outside walls and then rebuild it from the outside up. But we kept the trusses. You can today go up and touch one of those old trusses and kind of have this, again, reflective moment about the stories and the people and the traditions and the history that was in that Coliseum. And then we made it function for today. And another one of those capstone moments for me is when we cut the ribbon on the new Coliseum, and my grandson came down from Chicago, and he's 2 years old. And I looked at him, and of course, he'll never remember this, but I did. It's like, in another 75 years, I hope you're here to cut the ribbon on the next iteration of the Coliseum. I mean, we're just lucky that and I'm really prideful about what we've done out here. We haven't torn down things. We've reimagined them and kept that nod to the history and those traditions. And then we've just built it for today and the future.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that because another major project there is the old swine barn,
right?
Which that swine barn no more. It's the Indiana Farm Bureau Fall Creek Pavilion, which is hosting a variety of events. But just like you talk about with the Coliseum, you really tried to keep some of the history and heritage of the swine barn, but yet create this modern venue.
Right. So when you walk in the old structure from the north side going south, we kept that major entry moments and then kind of what I would call the lobby of that building. And then we dropped the building down to grade level. That's another interesting part about this fairgrounds. It was kind of built on the southeast corner, really on a hill. And the grade change, not only when we were doing the Corteva Coliseum renovation, but also the Fall Creek Pavilion, there is a steep grade. And it was a challenge for people back in the day loading pigs into that facility. And so a creative idea from Schmidt Associates, and they dropped the entry level. But I think, again, that the history of this place is when they built these buildings back in the early 1900s, 1920s, 30s, they built them for single use. They built a 4.5 acre cattle barn. They built a 60,000 square foot building for pigs. The South Pavilion was a dirt floor to house horses. And in today's world, we look at the landscape of this campus as an economic engine. How can we drive business? How can we drive the economy? And when we think about that, we think of it to maximize that use. And Swine Barn now accommodates, we just hosted last weekend the Big Ten indoor track and field, a 200-meter temporary track that goes in December. And we host 5 meets. The USATF Nationals are going to be here next year and the following year. The Big Ten Championship, the Missouri Valley tournament or meet. And so that multi-use is incredibly important as we continue to evolve this
Yeah.
historic.
As you look back, as you reflect back on all of this change, I mean, to think that there would be a collegiate championship track meet at the Indiana State Fairgrounds in a state-of-the-art facility, big change. Talk about, was there resistance to change? You know, by maybe some of the old timers, as they say at the fairgrounds, to changing things there.
I would say that again, this is the Cindy Hoye philosophy on Hoosiers that we don't want to move the cheese and change that history and that memory. It's always our challenge with the fair, Gary. You're bringing up a really good point, even just from the fair. It's like your family wants to go to the same saltwater taffy stand that you remember going to with your grandfather, and you don't want that memory to change. But you also, so I think as we've proven a trust with Hoosiers and with the state, and that we can move that needle, but we will be mindful of your memory, and we will take into consideration your memory and your heart when we're making those changes and those improvements. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it is also one of those. I remember when there was a fair, I think it was 2013, before the Coliseum was done. And we let people during the fair walk through the renovation as it was happening. And they walked in and the floor seemed way too low. And there was concern that we were not going to be able to accommodate those incredible draft horse hitches, the 6-horse hitch and the 8-horse hitches that come in the Coliseum. There's grave concern, but it was the fear of the unknown more than anything. And so we just constantly, Gary, have to prove that we're going to keep your memories, and we're just going to continue to make them better and make this campus better. And that's been our mantra, is even if you look at our mission is to preserve it, but continually make it better. And that's what we have to prove on all our projects.
Yeah. You mentioned memories, and I'm sure you have many, many memories and interesting moments over the course of the past several decades. Always unfair, I think, to ask people what's your favorite memory, but what are a couple memories that really stand out? I mean, you mentioned the Coliseum project, but maybe some of the other things that really stand out to you as you reflect back on your tenure.
Yeah, I would just say there's some magical moments for me. I've been going through again a lot of photos and a lot of memorabilia, and there's this picture standing outside of the Indiana Farm Bureau Fall Creek Pavilion, and it is myself and the leadership team. So it is our vice presidents and these incredibly talented young professionals, Gary. They're amazing. And I have that goosebump moment of, yes, cutting the ribbon to the new building, but also standing out there with the team behind the scenes that made it happen. That's a moment for me, and just a very proud, and they tease me around here. They call me Mama Hoye. And it was a Mama Hoye moment of like how proud I am of the team of people that are out here. I also had a funny moment that I don't have captured in a photo, and that's probably just as well. But back in the day when we had the Hoosier 100 and the Holman 100 on the track, right? And as you remember those Friday nights before the Indy 500, the race that was out here, that's where all the drivers would start. They'd start on these dirt tracks across Indiana, and we were one of them. But I got a chance to be in it was a 2-seater, but it was the Camp Dirt car. So it's the open wheel. And Gary, you're going down the backstretch, and I was closing my eyes, and I'm like, wait a minute, I got to keep my eyes open because I'm never going to have this moment again. But we went through the 4th turn, and those vehicles go kind of sideways.
Yes, right. Yeah.
Dirt. So I'm in the back seat, but I was ahead of the driver in the front seat because the backside of the car was coming around quicker than the front seat. And that was just a really fun, because again, I grew up going to races and sitting in the infield, and so those are sometimes. And I think a moment for me always, and I always say this moment as year after year, my grounding moment of why I'm here, what our purpose is. And I walk into, and it's the swine barn, and walk into that barn and see those 4-H'ers and those little kids that are 9, 10-year-old, and their parents that are right beside them as they're getting their animals washed and ready to go into the ring, and grandparents are standing around. And so it is that incredible family moment of probably families from up in Kokomo or southern Indiana or rural Indiana, wherever they are, and they come to the great state fair. They are proud as punch to show their animal they work so hard on throughout their year. And it's that proud moment that it always captures me every year. And it always makes me, at the end of the fair, I always want to move to a farm in central Indiana for my grandkids, right?
Yeah, that's great. You're probably going to miss that piece of it, I guess, right? Yeah,
it really is. It's really impactful. It's what we're all about. I'm always really proud of the fact that there are other moments during the fairs when we're out at the free stage and we see this blend of Indiana. We see the urban and the rural. We see families. We see young people just having a wonderful, just happy. They're just in their happy place, and they're taking in a little bit of Americana and traditions that are just incredibly special. And those moments are some proud moments for me.
Much more ahead with Cindy Hoye, the outgoing executive director of the Indiana State Fair Commission. When we return, we'll talk about leadership lessons, economic impact. What's next at the Indiana State Fairgrounds? That's when the Business and Beyond podcast returns. Stay with us.
As a bank, PNC prides itself on being boring. But the truth is they couldn't be more excited to serve the dynamic Indianapolis community. For nearly 160 years, they've quietly toiled away to deliver brilliant results for their equally brilliant clients. They have dedicated PNC teams throughout the local area, all ready to do the boring work to help you unlock your own brilliance. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865. PNC Bank, National Association member FDIC.
And welcome back to the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. My guest this week is Cindy Hoye, a longtime friend and also the outgoing executive director of the Indiana State Fair Commission. And Cindy, as you, I think, have a couple of more weeks left officially there at the fairgrounds. As you look back on your tenure, it included a difficult moment in the history of the fairgrounds. That was the stage collapse back in 2011, where several people lost their lives. Tragically, it affected the fair, the state. As you reflect today, we like to get into leadership thoughts on the podcast. But as you reflect on this, how did that moment shape you personally as a leader and your leadership capabilities going through that tough time?
Yeah, I mean, a very difficult, tragic event that happened that affected me personally and professionally. And it's one of those moments where I paused and I always go back to history of this place. And that's always, I think, our foundation. I think you always have to, that is my why. That is my foundation, that like this iconic historic place. And I went back to 1963. 1963, there was another tragic event that happened out here, and it was an explosion that happened in the Coliseum. And so what I talked to the team a lot about is what happened between that explosion in 1963 and then what happened in 1964. And in 1964, less than a year from that event, the Beatles came and they performed not only in the Coliseum, but then they performed also in the Grandstand. They did 2 shows. And so how did the team carry on during that 8-month period? And what kind of lessons could I learn from that and impart to my team to be determined and resilient and learn the tough lessons? And really at the very beginning, Gary, and kind of throughout the whole, even today, it's about people, right? And it's about prioritizing people. And not only did we, prioritize the victims and the families, and but it was also the team out here and the governor stepping in. So it was all initially it was all about people. And then relying on your Andre Lacey said this, and he always talked about know and use your resources. And during that time period was when Andre was chair of the commission. And he always talked about what resources do we know and can we use to better ourselves and make the changes that need to be made and the lessons that need to be learned. So it's relying on those wiser people, perhaps than even you are. And again, using other resources to help you problem solve.
Yeah.
I think those are some of my leadership moments. And the other thing I'm just going to, as I then now have to live with that, and that's a part of me and who I am, it's also part of this institution. There are some other moments that have been very reflective for me. I was in 2014, so that happened in 2011. In 2014, I'm in Chicago at my daughter's apartment overlooking Lollapalooza with 400,000 attendees, and they evacuated. There was a storm that was coming. And I don't think that would have happened had we not gone through what we did and the outdoor entertainment industry learning those lessons. The Derby evacuated at one point, the infield, football games now evacuate. I mean, so those tough, hard lessons that we learned and were shared throughout again, I call it the outdoor entertainment industry. Those takeaways are what's really compelling for us, is to know that we learned those lessons, we made incredible improvements, and so did others in the business.
You mentioned the entertainment business. Certainly, a lot of entertainment runs through the Indiana State Fairgrounds, and it's a competitive industry, obviously. And you look at the transformation, not just at the fairgrounds, but locally here. Fishers has a new arena. Noblesville has a new arena. Obviously, there's Indianapolis. How do you look at that competitive landscape, and how do you look at competition going forward for entertainment, sporting events, that kind of thing?
I think you have to stay true to who you are. Number one, you have to be mindful of what sets you apart from that competition. What are your differentiators? I would say from the very get-go, our team is amazing, and the people behind the scenes that do the work. And so that's a differentiator. I think we are also, we are not in a position where we are solely the arena. We have 1 million square feet of space for all different kinds of events and activities. And so as we look at backfilling some of the arena dates, we're looking at competitive cheerleading events that need multiple facilities to be in. So our campus are filled with connectors. And so those are things that set us apart and make us different. And those are the things that I think we continue to tout. We have really focused on the free stage, and the differentiator there is that those concerts are free. And so those are different than going to Ruoff or going to Everwise Amphitheater. Those are all paid venues. Our venue during the fair is going to be free. And so I think those are things that set us apart and our strengths. And I think those are what we have to rely on.
What are you going to miss? I mean, at the start of the fair each year, I think back, I liken it to playing high school football. And you had when practice started, when it was so hot out there was a smell of the grass. There was a certain thing that I, to this day, still smell in August. Did you get that at the fairgrounds when the fair starts?
My analogy is Christmas morning.
Okay.
Every, August 1st, an opening day of the fair, it's Christmas morning. And we have all these presents that we have wrapped that are hidden underneath trees, and we're gonna unwrap them for you. And so I always liken it to that. And absolutely, I have been in a very unique position where I've raised my kids out here, and so I've seen it through their eyes. I've seen that magic where their pupils and their eyes get really big and they're so excited. And now through my grandchildren, I get to see whoa, that's incredible. And so I will miss it from a large standpoint, but I will still bring the grandbabies here because to see their magic and their eyes light up with it. And there's something about it. I mean, my favorite is opening morning, and you get here at 5:30 and it's dark and the lights are just coming on, and you can see them in the midway, and you can smell the biscuits and sausage that are being cooked in the barns, and you see that, the families starting to gather. And there's going to be magic moments that I'm going to wish that I could see, but I'll be here, and I'll be here early in the morning too.
Looking
just
forward
as a spectator, right?
As a spectator,
right?
Less stress, less responsibilities, but you'll have fun. Hey, quick question as we wrap up. Ray Allison is your successor, right? And he's on board as executive director. Any words of advice or thoughts for Ray as he begins his tenure as executive director?
Cherish it, protect it, love it, make it better. And he will do all those things. He has been out here for years. He's been anywhere from parking cars to running our foundation to helping to elevate the ag education we do in the Glass Barn and Pioneer Village and all those wonderful things. And so he is not, now you could say drank the Kool-Aid, but out here we talk about drinking a lemon shake-up. He's
right.
Had a couple lemon shake-ups. So he's going to be just fine, and he will do a tremendous job on the next iteration of leadership out here.
Yep. Well, Cindy Hoye, you have certainly made the Indiana State Fairgrounds, the Indiana State Fair better over your many years as executive director and your roles at the Indiana State Fair. Really appreciate you taking the time for the podcast, and I look forward to catching up with you soon and maybe out at the fair, and we can enjoy a lemon shake-up together.
Let's do it, Gary. Thanks for the time.
All right. Thank you. Cindy Hoye, executive director of the Indiana State Fair Commission, outgoing at the end of the month here after many years of service at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. And thank you for joining us on this edition of the Business and Beyond podcast presented by PNC. We're a weekly conversation with achievers in business, sports, entertainment, and beyond. And you can download all of our episodes and get Indiana business news 24/7. All you have to do is go to InsideIndianaBusiness.com. I'm Gary Dick. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.
You know, the economy and the market are in a hairy place these days. It's up a lot, it's down a lot, it's sideways, and it seems on the hour there's breaking news coming out of all areas of the country. How do you get your head around that? How do you not go crazy in the process? I'm Peter Dunn. You may know me as Pete the Planner, IBJ columnist, and my job for years has been to help you understand your financial life better in context with everything else going on. So what am I encouraging you to do? Well, listen to the Pete the Planner Show. Yeah, it's a podcast. You can get it wherever you get your podcasts, or simply listen at ibjpodcasts.com.
Do you want to know what really drives change in Indiana? You won't find it in sound bites. You'll find it in stories. Stories from CEOs, lawyers, coaches, entrepreneurs, and community advocates. That's the IBJ Media Podcast Network. Insightful, local, impactful. Find all of our shows by searching IBJ Media in your podcast app or visit ibjpodcast.com.